Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Edinburgh Television Festival Worldview Address 2018. And fittingly, this year's keynote speech will be given by a man sitting on top of the world, and I think you should have a pretty good view of it from there. Paul Telegdy is the President, Alternative and Reality Group for NBC Universal, and I think you probably know that NBC is the current #1 network in the US, and Paul's group has the #1 and #2 reality shows in the country in the shape of The Voice and America's Got Talent. I think that qualifies as being hot, a rare quality here in the east of Scotland. And delegates, the good news is he is one of our own. He was born in London and cut his teeth at BBC Worldwide, where the deal he structured for Dancing with the Stars, the US version of Strictly, launched him into the American big time. He joined NBC in 2008 and now oversees the network's unscripted series and specials programming, and was appointed to that position in 2016, the year he also launched Universal Television Alternative Studios. Paul is without doubt one of America's, and therefore the world's, most successful television executives, and we are privileged to be able to hear now his 2018 Worldview address. Paul Telegdy.
Well, thanks for having me, Edinburgh Television Festival. And like so many conferences and industry gathering places, the conversation's rightly dominated by the extraordinary pace of change in the platforms and distribution business. Words of wisdom about intellectual property, data, algorithms, and disruption. The future. Well, I'm delighted to say that I work in a technology, entertainment, and information services company that's well populated with experts in all of those things. And they keep us and the rest of the company nicely up to speed. But I've also learned from Y2K, the OL Time Warner merger, the Squarial, MySpace, and Vine, that the sky's always falling in somewhere, if that's what disruption is. So I want to talk about the future, and very specifically your role in it. It's about the work that we do, the stories that we tell, and it is because in the future we will be facing unique challenges of technology's impact on our culture and thought. Ideas take seed a great deal faster in the era of social media. So now, more than ever, we must be extremely thoughtful about what ideas we put out and how we do so. And if the gift of modern era of video is almost unlimited resources to spread ideas, what kind of accountability are we prepared to accept? People often ask me how I got into the entertainment industry. And the answer is, unfortunately, quite a banal blend of dumb luck and some force of personality. That I'm only interested in the question why I got into the entertainment industry. Because it's the answer to that question that unites me with the people I work with and drives my passion for coming to work. So here it is. I like to entertain. I want to be a part of something big. And I want to make the world a better place. I joined the BBC in 1998, 20 years ago. France won the World Cup. The Eurozone had just fixed its currencies. And Bill Clinton was about to order airstrikes against Iraq, just before articles of impeachment were issued by Congress against him. Oh, and a little cheeky upstart called Google was founded. And it was very like today. The BBC is an amazing place to spend any part of a career in television. But like so many great institutions, it's occasionally ritualistic and baffling to outsiders. When I arrived, they just started a huge joint venture with Discovery Communications. The management at the time was populated with progressive, good people, perhaps a little middle class. I remember a meeting in which I first was apprised of an extraordinary threat: climate change. The BBC's Natural History Unit had been documenting the planet's animals' struggles with changing weather. And I remember a very senior programming executive saying that nothing else mattered apart from our, as in the BBC's, responsibility to communicate to as many people as possible the impact that mankind was having on planet Earth. I looked around the room. and I understood that every program maker, marketer, researcher, or even whatever job I was doing for the BBC at the time, took that lead from that person. And I also looked around the room and saw that pretty much everyone in the room was nodding in agreement. Wow, that was powerful. So I learned that being part of an organization that understood data, facts, information, and whose mission was truth and understanding, did not have to compromise popularity and creativity in pursuit of that mission. Explicitly, I learned that storytelling with responsibility could be a key to positive cultural change. The BBC taught me what it felt like to work somewhere with standards of truth. Not just in news and current affairs, but in all kinds of storytelling, where there were consequences for making choices that didn't reflect the greater good. I learned that I always wanted to be a part of an organization that attracts top talent. It's constantly bringing in new people. It's also a great place for an entire career if you want. Bringing people together around big ideas goes to the heart of the institution I choose to work for then, and it's why I choose the company I'm at now. So let's flash back to 2008 when I joined NBC Universal. Barack Obama was about to be elected President of the United States. It was a hopeful time. But Lehman Brothers bankruptcy had just triggered a world recession. And our owners at the time were deemed too big to fail, but they nearly did. And we were all just figuring out how to type on this new thing called the iPhone. And I was going to work at NBC, which was the home of some of the most iconic television shows of my youth growing up. Characters that I related to, we related to, stories that brought us together, and shows that were woven into the fabric of our collective consciousness. But that's not the NBC I joined in 2008. The company just experienced its own version of disruption. In fact, it was very troubled. We were in 4th place, out of 4, and everyone was looking for a silver bullet. Some show, some format, something that would pull us out of a slump. We even moved a late-night show into prime time. But programming wasn't the problem. Hits wasn't the issue. It was a cultural problem. We felt like a very cynical place. We were a little bit mean-spirited in how we were speaking to each other, how we assessed the work, and how we related to talent. We'd got to a point where we lost sight of why we were all there. Slowly but surely, we started to find our way back to who we were at the core. We tapped into the DNA of an institution. More importantly, the people that that institution was built on, and why they were all there in the first place. So we returned to our storytelling roots, and we realigned our mission with the people who had founded the company. And simply put, this is our mission: to change the world into a better place by bringing people together around great TV. And 10 years later, here's where that got us. Shows that have a place in the legacy of NBC. And by the way, shows that have made us the #1 network. It is possible to do the right thing and still win in business. Now, there are 3 words that I'm quite fond of that some in the audience will find pejorative. And when I use them, they seem to have a kind of reverse Benjamin Button effect. I get older, my hair gets grey, and my suit turns to tweed. Here they are: broadcast, accountability, institution. 3 words that are exactly why I got into this business. So let's discuss. Broadcast. When I say broadcast, I'm not talking about transmitting a signal into a box, but it's a frame of mind. A broadcaster is someone who wants their work to be seen on the largest scale possible, who wants to be part of something big, and who wants to make a meaningful impact with their work. A broadcaster understands that that canvas comes with huge implications. They make content thinking that anyone in the world might be watching. Broadcast is about scale, unification, immediacy, and longevity. And it's this magic source that makes us a natural partner for some of the biggest rights holders in the world and some of the smallest independent producers. Because whether you're the International Olympic Committee, or Fremantle Media, or the NFL, and whether your institution is the Olympics, America's Got Talent, you will find perfect partner in the cohorts of NBC Universal. We love the biggest shows on earth. The ones that unite us as a society, and therefore have an immediate currency for our fellow storytellers in the advertising and brand marketing space. Right into the heart of every house in the living room, but also wherever you can carry your media. You see, as broadcasters in the US, we're a network of real people, real operators on the ground in over 250 affiliated stations. And they give us a feedback loop and context that just goes well beyond ratings and data and draws on decades of cultural and physical belonging. And we're accountable in a variety of ways, and proudly so. What does accountability mean? Well, in the case of all of our shows, we make them as if we answer to higher powers. And that could mean lots of different things to lots of different people. To us, it means we approach all of our content with diligence, a commitment to truth, and that we'll follow through on what we set out to do. We're not censors, we're editors and curators. And if anyone at our company was profiting from fake news, they'd encounter an army of people working against them. And in the case of our unscripted shows, we won't make any show that we wouldn't be proud to have a close family member appear in or work on. Over the course of The Voice's 15 cycles, we've been accountable and responsible to thousands of talent, huge team of producers, nourishing them and their careers, working with them to evolve new skills and a new generation of craftspeople, making them a part of a family, something bigger than themselves. On and off camera, we're also relentlessly inclusive and indeed affirmative in our actions to represent diversity and unity. And the same would be true on any NBC show, whether produced in-house or by a third party. On the scripted side, I can think of no better show to define accountability than Law & Order Special Victims Unit, which is currently in its 20th season on our network. Decades before the Me Too movement came everyday conversation. This show was teaching people every week about women's rights, victims' rights, and finding a path towards justice and healing. When this show came on air, it started a really important cultural conversation, one that could only happen on a broadcast network, and one that deeply understood accountability for storytelling. You know, we've taken a story that needed to be told and amplified, and we've seen the results. There are independent studies that show that people that have watched SVU are legitimately smarter when it comes to understanding their own rights in the legal system and the rights of people who've experienced any kind of harassment or sexual assault. And the star of the show, Mariska Hargitay, so affected by her preparation for the role and executive producing the show that she started a non-profit that has since grown to help hundreds of thousands of women who've been put in danger. Dick Wolf has shepherded a world-class franchise, now in its third decade, that effectively blended advocacy with storytelling and prevailed through commercial headwinds and an ad sales department that told us we shouldn't be telling these stories. And it's gone on to be a multi-platform ratings titan. So accountability means that we must care about what we put on our air. It means we're part of an institution that's going to be long around after a show picker like me has chosen something else to do. And they'll be long enough to see the consequences if we don't pay attention. Speaking of institutions, SNL, Saturday Night Live, is an institution. It's always relevant, and it changes all the time. A constantly evolving kinetic and creative energy that adapts to the future, but also deeply rooted in a great history. It's about understanding what's worked in the past, but also bringing in fresh people with new ideas who are going to make sure you're around for decades to come. And Lorne Michaels' sketch comedy show is now in its, going into its fifth decade, now lives in dozens of places, not just on TV, Snapchat, YouTube, and of course a great app. And you can watch it however and whenever you want, not just at the middle of the night on Saturday. It's almost cheeky to stand under an SNL slide. But my favorite thing about this is it clearly showcases the SNL institution is just like the NBC institution in the sense that it's built on the people that shepherd it. And being a part of a great institution means building meaningful and lasting relationships with audiences and talent. And it's putting people first and partnering them, not just on giving them their next job, but on building a career. And it means that you get to draw on the wisdom and experience of industry giants, which is invaluable for talent and executives alike. NBC Universal knows that some have earned a light touch over decades of collaboration or track record, but others need more guidance. I like to use Amy Poehler to illustrate what this looks like over the long term with talent. From her SNL days, she went on to play Leslie Knope in the iconic NBC sitcom Parks and Recreation. Okay. Now she's hosting and producing a crafting series called Making It, which is currently airing on NBC, while she waits for her sitcom, I Feel Bad, which she's executive producer of, to launch this autumn. And by the way, she's directed herself, Tina Fey, and Maya Rudolph in a Netflix movie, which I can't wait to see. So we are future-proofing our organization by focusing on the brand of our people as much as our shows. And we want to be in business with inventive and prolific people who want to do lots of different kinds of projects. So we need to be an agile and adaptive partner to meet those needs. And our studios are a buzzing crossroads of TV, movies, and digital productions. The global communications and entertainment industry has never needed the British creative community's contribution more. And everyone in this room should be vocal in defense of institutions that uphold the truth, but also dare to be judged by things other than the bottom line. And as we enter a period with a proliferation of content, we're confident that our values and the value we want to add will attract top talent and top rights holders. And our commitment across generations of viewers, employees, and partnerships have formed a culture, a lasting culture of creative collaboration for passion, for purpose, and for profit. And there are a lot of choices for storytellers, performers, and creators these days. And there's a lot of money in the system. Just work with people you're drawn to. Not just for commercial reasons, but for all of the important reasons you are who you are. And let's strive harder than ever to use communication platforms for positive change. Encourage and demand transparency, and hold ourselves accountable. Thank you. Sorry, that was all very serious and grown up. I hope you're all right.
Okay. The impact you have. Thank you, Paul. That was such a fascinating roadmap about the way into the future. But listen, before we start, we're going to have a look at the reason why NBC in Paul Telegdy's department is #1.
I have a small sideline, and that's my voice at the end of that.
I could tell. It's subtle. I love it. Yeah, so that is the #1 network, and you see why.
No, I have to apologize for the kind of bloviating nature of a tape like that, because that was the open for our annual advertising sales presentation, which we do every May. So that's kind of, you know, is kind of bigger an expression of yay, look at us, as we have to put out there because it's what pays the bills. So, but I'm very proud of that output.
Yes, you should be. You should be. So, your address, it's very interesting. You're picking up on themes that have been very prevalent in this year's festival. Storytelling, truth, connection with the audience. Is there something in the air, in the broadcasting air that we're all tuning into?
I think there must be. Because I haven't been in Edinburgh for the better part of a decade, and you know, this annual coming together, you know, in a kind of soapbox for a few people, and you know, the state and the state of the navel of the entertainment industry in the United Kingdom is a very good bellwether for what's important to people on an annual basis. So yes. The truth is under attack in a profound and truly astonishing way. And so that anyone who considers themselves in any way connected to the truth has an additional and specific responsibility. And I think that's a theme that people are picking up on globally. What's fake, what's real. And I think that some of the kind of slightly po-faced serious content of an address like that is, because I think it's a very important junction point in the creative industry I've chosen to work in. Yeah. And we need all of your help.
Yeah. Now we're going to sit and talk for a little while, maybe quite a long while, but everyone is free to participate here. Our famous app, which may or may not be working, I think it is working. It's a detail. It'll be ready tomorrow. You can contribute by uploading questions. There's some questions coming in already, and I'm going to filter them in as we go through. But please.
What, when are you going back to America?
Oh no, that's been curated out. Another word that came up there, and as you said, is sometimes a pejorative word, and that word is institution. Now, you have worked for two institutions, separated by one letter, NBC and BBC. Now, the NBC future, you're saying, looks bright. From your perspective, the other institution that begins with a B, do you think the same thing applies?
I very much hope so. The BBC means a lot to me, as it means to a lot of, I think, former employees, and I think that I heard Jeremy Corbyn refer to it as a kind of bellwether or a very important pillar in the industry here. And I actually do think the BBC has an absolute culture of adapting and evolving for changing media. You know, I was reading about early conversations Lord Reith was having with the Music Hall Owners Association as they worried that radio would kill the live business. And I'm thinking at the Edinburgh Festival, still selling tickets to live events, that all of our fears around technology as it impacts on the creative community are never really realized. And at the BBC, actually, when I joined in 1998, it was still dial-up. I sort of jokingly referred to it. It was all about the promise of broadband and what would happen when this thing called the internet, which I went to meetings with someone whose job was the controller, the internet, right? That it was immediately recognized as an absolutely new technology, one that needed to be embraced, that whole sections of resources and the underlying businesses would need to rapidly, but in a managed way, evolve. And actually, for me, the BBC at the time had incredibly bright strategists, and they really did see the future in the pre-dial-up days. If they're being allowed the same freedom to plan for the future and being well-resourced, the BBC finds a way to evolve and adapt.
Good. I can see as the questions are coming in, people are very interested in finding out how television shows are made, how NBC shows are made, and therefore how they're successful and how people can get involved. Let me just ask an overall question. You're number one, and we see those shows, we recognize those shows, we see them here. Is it possible, and this is maybe a bit trite, is there some NBC, and I've heard this is an American phrase, so I'll use it, is there a secret sauce, an NBC secret sauce that applies?
I think that we always just encourage people to look at the shows that are the NBC shows that they love or identify with. And I think coming to a UK audience, when you're putting up like Simon Cowell, am I watching NBC or ITV? You know, because it's very much shared creative DNA. But if you look at our shows, what a hero looks like on NBC. You know, we always sort of say, what's a president look like on, and our president is President Bartlett from The West Wing. And you can keep the rest as they're portrayed on television in any other way. They're very on the nose, very hopeful, very uplifting characters, and that's true whether it's unscripted or, you know, the way any of our feelings around our shows are communicated are very honest, very direct. They're about humans, real people. So not very rarely does NBC err into like big imagined worlds and it's very hard for us to be successful unless it works on a number of different levels. So human first, and then all of our shows seem to have this very uplifting, upbeat feel to them, and it's unapologetic. You come to the UK and people sort of are cynical about the tone of some of these things, and we're relentlessly positive. Why? Because there's so many people being relentlessly negative, we just choose the other way, and it's worked over decades. And then ingenuity, which I think is just the ultimate challenge for anyone working in television, which is there's always been a cop show, there's always been a singing competition show, it's just the challenge of the audience deserves something different and a little bit more. That's that inventiveness. And if you really look at the heart of NBC shows, there are a lot of firsts. The first of its type, the first single camera comedy, the first single shot cold open. If you look at the ER pilot and you look at the way it's shot, it's revolutionary in a subtle way that makers and creators and craftspeople understand, but the audience just enjoys. So the secret sauce is just a commitment to inventiveness and excellence. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And then the programming qualities that are consistent with our brand.
Yeah. So you have this unique position because you are British, you're over there, and we can sense that you have fully assimilated.
I was born in Britain, but my father's a Hungarian immigrant that was naturalized in Detroit. Yeah. So I'm kind of a weird citizen of the world, but I think that vantage point has been useful.
Yes, but you understand the UK sensibility.
Very well.
US sensibility.
Yeah.
Now, what the theme that is now emerging, and thank you, everybody is contributing. The main question, if I can sum up several questions here, how can British program makers
access NBC?
Access NBC, but come in, because you're defining very precise things that you like. How can we do it? What is it you're looking for? And what of UK sensibility, beyond our cynicism, what is it that we can offer?
Well, actually, no. You see, there's a cynicism that doesn't actually, when you listen to the tone of an average news broadcast or the shows that are defining British television, I think they're very uncynical. I think Love Island is actually not cynical. I think it's very innocent and.
Do you want it?
What?
Would you like it? Oh, as
it happens, it isn't right for NBC.
Yeah.
But I love it and I applaud its success. So I think it's not cynical. I think it's quite innocent and fresh, and I think it's a credit to its producers. Yeah. Some of the other tonal things that I think we always appreciate when we look at British shows is I think there's an eye on humour. Like whatever the show is, I think there's always an approach which we really appreciate from British program makers, is that the voiceover will err on the side of comedic, that people lean into wanting to make people smile as much as we want to touch emotion and things like that. As far as selling to us, the thing you put on your tape is obviously the things that are the big loud and are the biggest shows on TV. But I would not want to discourage, I think that one of the things we're good at is turning quite small sounding ideas into big things as well. And I don't want to discourage people with great self-contained factual entertainment ideas. The pitches that we spark to as we've been meeting with people, just even in the last 24 hours, some of them are surprisingly small ideas, but then drop through our organization, and what we add could really be elevated and feel big. Not just by slapping a massive star into them, but by the marketing we would attach to them. So there's no mystery. I shouldn't really say to an audience this large, there is an easy submissions process, and every single idea that comes to NBC is screened and is taken care of and put through the system. The advantages you get with different kinds of access, they're the same in every business. Smart people with a story they've got to tell find a way of getting it into the right offices. And if they're getting any resistance, we have every mechanism to let small indies, big indies, people who've never made a TV show before are filtered in one way. So access is not an issue in getting your ideas to NBC. Selling a show is really hard.
Yes.
And it is like getting a camel through the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
And it should be.
Yeah. People are asking, there's one question here, asking specifically, shiny floor formats, are they dead?
No. So I got to America in 2004, and very specifically, looking at broadcast, whatever television was, I was like, what's good? What are the new shows? Everyone was saying, drama's dead. Drama is dead. What are you talking about? It was Lost and Desperate Housewives came along in the next season. Now, drama's hot. And so those kind of reactions by genre to, I think that the shiny floor show, the big shiny floor show, which has been, I think, a huge economic and ratings engines for BBC, not an economic engine, but a ratings engine for ITV, for NBC, and on a global basis. Those franchises have cast such a long shadow in the business that the audience is demanding more, and rightly so. So I think that Shiny Floor isn't dead. It's working incredibly well and still counts for millions of viewers. But the new ones are being held to a higher standard of accountability by audiences. And I think that's a challenge that networks, program makers, the creative community is up to, has been over the years. So there'll be something great that pops.
Yeah. So coming off the back of that, and here's a word, I'm seeing these words come up, and the word is risk. So you work for an institution. Traditionally, institutions can be risk averse. Are you in a risk averse place?
No. I mean, it's you know what? That's the kind of thing that I always just like shatter as a myth. No. What an institution, or let's move off the word institution. We're a corporation that has institutional qualities that are 100 years old. We're not in pursuit of the next shiny thing, but we pursue growth and profits. We're not ashamed of that. So, that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, you use the word profit in your mantra, so it's still, this is still a commercial operation.
Yeah, very much so.
And so another thing coming up, and this is interesting. We're talking here. We've been talking about linear television, about network television, traditional. The world is changing. You're accepting that. People are asking, and this is a very good question about the SVODs, the giant SVODs, alternative programming, your specialist area. Can that, we know drama works, can that survive? Some things have been tried, some things have failed. Do you see a future for alternative programming working in that scale?
Very much so. I mean, I've watched a few things on, I've watched a few alternative, I've watched Grand Tour, I've watched alternative shows on Netflix, and it's an absolutely perfect environment for watching certain kinds of shows. Yeah. I think that they will thrive. There'll be a lot of unscripted programming, I think, on those services. Yeah.
Questions just come in, and I think this is probably the voice of the room, and it's quite plaintive. Realistically, how much space is there on NBC's schedule for British formats?
Well, the answer is really there's almost unlimited real estate for the next big thing. We've got a track record of clearing the way. If we say, again, in terms of taking risks, quite the reverse is true. We plunge into the big ones. They're too tempting for us. We have to show some restraint around wanting to take big swings. But we're completely open. I mean, how could we not be? If you look at the shows, the kind of DNA that runs between program makers, both sides of the Atlantic, specifically in this subgenre of programming, is so strong. We hear a lot of British accents on all of our shiny floor shows, our studio shows. Indeed, there's a very strong DNA link with the British creative community in our genre. Yeah. So we are reassured by the British perspective when it comes to this area of programming, because frankly it's always been considered an important area of program making in the UK. In the US, we actually have a different cultural inheritance where it's a struggle to be taken seriously with shows of this nature, or unscripted shows. And so the British community has lent huge credence to both the creative quality and the economic value of unscripted programming. So yes, we're wide open.
Good. Paul, another word that you used and is being picked up here is accountability. And there's a very good question that's come in. Accountability. Please describe a case, in your experience, how NBC has been truly accountable to a truth. The nature of unscripted seems to demand manipulation and control of reality. Discuss.
All I can go by is my own experience. And again, I know that there are, by the way, I think there are perfectly entertaining reality shows that live in a kind of constructed reality. They're not on NBC. A video package with a contestant is set up with a director and a producer. I mean, it is constructed reality, but it's honest and truthful in a completely different way. I'm not saying, say this for an effect. We try and maintain kind of working practices across our show that feel truthful. I just, again, where we encounter producers thinking that it's their job to mislead our viewers in their storytelling, we resist it. It really isn't in our program making.
There's a line which stood out from what you said when you were talking about reality shows. You said you will not make a reality show that you would feel uncomfortable putting a member of your family into. It sounds simple. That's a big line. Does that follow through? Do you genuinely believe that that's the case?
Well, I don't have any talented family members, so I don't. But that is that is 100% true.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I will stand on. I mean, we make shows where that's a kind of threshold test. If we had when we think about teenage contestant going into a show, would we let our teenager do that? What's the environment they're walking into? How will a producer behave? Right down to its, what will be the lifestyle example that a minor is subjected to when they're on set on one of our shows? And you can interpret that however you want, but we have a culture that needs to follow through. And, it's one of the reasons why I think the working environment that we create on our shows is consistent. And it means that, I would say, if one of my cousins or, had a kid who was, I would have to say they couldn't be related to me for legal reasons and apply, but I would be able to say comfortably, you'll be received respectfully, you'll be treated correctly, and you won't be thrown under a bus for storytelling reasons.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about another very interesting part of your CV. I mentioned in 2016 you opened a studio, your own studio. Now, why did you do that? Has that worked? And does it make it difficult or harder for people to get shows through?
Well, we'd always operated a production entity that was producing umbrella, for instance, for all of our late night shows. So Universal Television Studios also has existed as a huge and proud producing brand of sitcoms and dramas. So we always had a studio and a producing studio brand. The difference was the formation of a unit under Meredith to focus very specifically on the area of unscripted programming.
Yeah.
And that studio is there to address, frankly, any market that there is. And it is to build off, again, program making DNA and an understanding of our genre that was built from executives that worked at the company for a long time. So they are in competition with the rest of the wider market, and they have some advantages. You can't be in denial about what vertical integration means or what an in-house studio means. But I prefer to think of them as a great partner for anyone if needed, and then there are others who will not need what they do, and then they are also going to be creators of their own first-class intellectual property, which we'll buy on its merits. It's anyone that thinks you can buy a show to do anything other than the right thing by a business, it hasn't been in an environment where these decisions are made. So it is a very good competitor to have in the marketplace if you're NBC. It may be, it's not an aggressive move into the creative community. It's a way to create partnerships within NBC Universal for program makers of all kinds.
And how directly involved are you in the studio?
Well, as directly involved as I am in anything that I do every day, which is I've got a brilliant leadership team in place there under Meredith, and just as a network, I have a very good leadership team under Jenny Groom, and then in my first run and syndicated, I have a leader in place. But all of the strategic thinking is done really now collectively from about 50,000 feet. So big decisions are made as a kind of collective, and we all talk about it, and then the leaders go off and lead, but I'm involved quite closely.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But let me ask you the questions that always get asked in Edinburgh, because it's important for producers to know. We've seen the shows you have, and there's a fantastic roster. What haven't you got? What is it that you'd like, that you want, that you don't have?
Well,
maybe somebody here could give you.
Well, that's that question, which is, what's the show? And it's not a personal taste thing, so I want to drop this through the filter. If NBC saw a show on another network that it wished it had, we're completely candid about it. It's Dragon's Den. It would have worked for us under our brand. It's Shark Tank, and it's on a rival network. Something with those qualities, which is easy, what I say, versatile in where you can program it because it's self-contained. Something with a returning character set, but also is able to evolve and accept changes. Because if you really have to be conscious of the manufacturing process in television. It's not about efficiency, but a show like that allows you a lot of different options as a broadcaster, and as a producer it affords some efficiencies. So we'd love a kind of Shark Tank, which is Dragon's Den in America, which is self-contained, something in the business space. I feel like that's always been on NBC's brand. What else are we looking for? Well, the big tent event is genuinely always on the checklist of things that will keep company with that loudest, biggest tape. And I don't think any producer will want to take their eyes off the potential of being involved in one of those big ones. But we're also looking for, the other thing I would say is we had a great success with a show called Who Do You Think You Are, which I think everyone knows is a British show. And what that actually represented was a high quality play that had an interesting story that you could go to a celebrity and say, well, this is actually going to be a journey you go on. And we variously tried to kind of ape the success of what that meant from I was going to use a sort of very markety word, from a feeling set, like, wow, I'm in an immersive journey with someone I care about, and there's a beginning, middle, and end. Those things feel very satisfying, so something like that. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure somebody here, a lot of people here might have that. And I'd like to ask you, again, practical questions. So someone here has that idea, a UK producer has that idea, comes to you, gets through the process, and is now in LA pitching to you. I've been in that position, and it's fascinating. It's a different world. Tell me about the etiquette. Tell me about the protocol, which is very different between the US and the UK. Can you do a little guidance? Well, I've been a salesperson, so I've been into those offices where you get a load of flat faces with no one wanting to give anything away. You pitch your little heart out, and everyone's like, thank you, next meeting, please. And so there's a sort of fine art. A fine art to not giving anything away is one version. We are a completely... The etiquette is come in, be yourself, be creative, tell your story. You'll quickly, it's not like some, ritualized thing. I'm a very relaxed person, and our team is very casual and informal around what the environment, we want people to be comfortable coming in and share, we know it's a vulnerable moment putting your creative work out there. And I hope it's not a daunting experience. There's no etiquette to it. Preparation and having a great pitch is probably the etiquette. Okay. Right? Yeah. There are no special rules. No. I mean, the sizzles. No, it's funny because it was quite liberating, because I remember at the BBC there used to be this offers round, and people would prepare a stack of papers, kill 8 trees to kind of go to a meeting to sell a TV show, and it's not like that. We're open on a rolling basis most days. I have 2 or 3 pitches where people are, how about this, how about that? And most of them are a quick, polite no, but we're always engaged in a dialogue in that way. You're a giant network. You have major stars on the network. What is the star system now in the US? Would a network show break with somebody that you've never seen before? Yeah. Does that, so it can happen? Yeah, I think that it's we want NBC and the platforms at our company to be populated with people that we all care about. And sometimes that's a star, but more often than not, it's the old cliche is that TV is about making stars and discovering stars. And a show like This Is Us, a drama like that, which has known actors in it, but now they are as famous as anyone has ever been in America from being on a TV show. So their status has changed. They were well-respected, great actors. They're now massive stars of a hit show.
Yeah.
So, you know, they can go on to host other things as well or do whatever they want, really.
Can I ask you a little bit about something that's happening at the moment, that's in the air at the moment, and this is mergers and acquisitions, and you, of course, are part of Comcast, and Comcast are in a battle at the moment.
I've heard.
With the future of Sky. Now, I hear that the story was given here that the chief executive of Comcast wants to buy Sky because a London cabbie told him it was better than Virgin. I don't know how true that is.
Well, the chief executive of our parent company is Brian Roberts, and I think that Comcast has DNA as a technology company. And so Brian absolutely loves the platform and set-top box part. And it is actually true because he told the story, I've heard him tell it. Yeah. That he was very drawn to Sky's world-class technology platform, because he'd really invested a lot of money in that at Comcast. So he was very drawn by that. As far as, you know, I mean, that's the story of how he got interested in Comcast. I think the story is still being written.
Yeah. So, but if it was to happen, I hear that it would make the biggest pay TV provider in the world with a total of 52 million customers. That's tempting, isn't it?
Well, look, all I can say is NBC Universal was acquired by Comcast in 2011. And so, and the experience of being integrated into Comcast, but also getting management and leadership that really wanted to invest, and it wasn't managing us in decline, but wanted to dive in and pile in, was the experience of being an NBC employee, suddenly having someone else administering your pension plan, which is the effect of changing hands that really matters. And we found we were part of a great company at the end of the process. So you know, if we're lucky enough, or if this goes through, I think it will be a good thing for everyone involved.
And would that mean that you, in that very long title you have, would you add the word Europe to it?
No, I don't think so, because the business is organized very methodically. But what I do think it would lead to is what I think we all crave, which is more collaboration internationally and working with more partners in the UK. So it might be a great thing for us.
We're getting towards the end now. I think the overall theme of what you've been saying is positive. You feel really positive about the future. And
well, there's never been lower barriers to entry for people who want to create video. My 15-year-old has what would have been in 1998 a $10 million suite of, or £10 million suite of AV editing tools available in the palm of her hand. And so it's impossible if you haven't been watching the very process of someone carrying a camera this big to someone carrying a camera that big, to not be excited about just the actual craft of what we're doing, and never mind all the gubbins about how people watch it and how it's funded. That we are just we're frankly at day one of the most exciting period of producing video in mankind, and I prefer to think about that as I go to work than any of the other dark clouds in the business.
Okay, and let me just ask you, because you've got some really interesting things in development, you've told me about some of them, and they're coming up. What is the single most exciting thing that's going to come and we'll be seeing eventually here, of all on the roster? I'm
really just not allowed to answer that question in a sort of such a profound way. It's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm always asking myself, could I get fired for saying what comes next? Well,
not one. Do a selection, and we can.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's funny. I mentioned it because I'm in it. There's something I'm extremely proud of that we're airing at the moment, which is the show I referred to in the presentation, which Amy Poehler's hosting. Yeah. Which is Making It, which, by the way, is generously inspired by the tone of shows that have been made here in the UK, of this kind of witty, thoughtful, kind, inclusive approach to something that's essentially about sewing, patchworking, woodworking, and making stuff. And making it is a new direction for us, which is very much plays on the DNA strengths of our scripted studio and our unscripted Universal Television Alternative Studio to create something that feels very pleasing and very different. And very pleasing and very different feels like the kind of shows we want to be doing.
And very, very funny. The two lead characters from Parks and Recreation, one of the funniest sitcoms in a reality show. Yeah. I think it's a work of genius.
Well, we were able to port over their amazing chemistry and also showcase something that we felt really wasn't there, which was a great platonic male-female relationship between two people that America really loved. So at its heart, it has a great friendship and a great relationship. And then it's a show which, ironically, is specifically encouraging people to turn off TV, which is I feel like a perverse and bold thing to do. So,
ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Paul Telegdy, for your honesty and for, most of all, I think, your enthusiasm and passion, which is truly inspiring in this industry. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's 2018 Worldview Address by Paul Telegdy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham. Thank you. Social. Did it go okay?
Yes, great.
Okay.